Ember Witch. Book 1. The Lich. Volume 1. Black Tragedy. Chapter 2. The Nightmare Begins. September 8, 457 to October 17, 458 BME. Fragment 13. Black Fire.
You need what?
Haith exclaimed in surprise.
I need alcohol, lots of it.
Syrya said with a straight face.
For what? You know, if this is about your Haven stem potion, I'm going to have to cut you off from the supply.
Haith replied.
It's for the cleansing, Father. You think I would be caught dead with a bottle of booze in my hands? Never. I hate the stuff. It tastes like rotten feet soaked in the waste of a ceratode. Ugh, just thinking of it disgusts me, but I need it to create a fire to break through the block. It's a natural flammable substance that will help disguise my mage fire. I need a keg of the stuff to soak a few logs in so that when I cast the flame it lights the alcohol first, not the wood.
Syrya explained, beginning to make a sour face just thinking about the first time she drank.
A keg? That's a good 200 gold. Are you sure we can't find something else?
Haith asked.
I'm sure it's the best thing for such a spell to be successful. I will even pay the church back if needed, but this isn't just about the cost, it's for the destruction of the page of the narcosis. It's for the betterment of the world and lives of that family.
Syrya made an excellent point, so Haith handed her a large pouch of coins.
I can't argue that, just don't get anything too expensive. We are not throwing a party. The cheaper the better, that way we still have money left over for our own supplies.
Haith said.
Of course, Father, I will return as quickly as I can.
She took off in a hurry and began exploring the pubs and bars for the keg she desired. After a few hours she came across a small booth sitting just outside of a construction site. The man was spouting something about how they had been lied to and that his product was aged in a cask of mage firewood. She was intrigued by that statement, so she approached the man.
Excuse me, sir, did you just mention mage firewood?
She asked in a curious tone.
Why, yes, young lady, I purchased this cask from a traveling elven mage who assured me that he had burned 20 trees to craft it. He said he was a woodworker and his signature craft was burning the tree with his magic before quickly snuffing the fire to give the wood a charred but mystical atmosphere. I was sold right away and knew that this would make a great tone within my rum.
The man explained with excitement. He was clearly trying his best at being a salesman, making his voice loud enough for the passing crowd to hear as well as her.
I'll take the entire keg,
Syrya said, looking down at the black cask sitting on the table in front of her. She focused onto the keg and definitely detected magic. It had a subtle pink glow to it, and she could smell a fragrance of peaches from it.
The entire thing?
The man said in shock.
Yes, I would like the entire cask. If what you say is true, I'm sure I will enjoy it,
she said, pulling her hood off, which had been obscuring her face. She then pointed up to her horns.
Oh, my Della and Elvin. Why, of course you can have the whole thing, it would be my honor, but I do have a request,
he said with a huge smile.
And what might that be?
She asked, waiting for the catch.
I'll sell this to you for 100 gold, but you have to make me another cask. These things don't come around often, and at that price you're definitely making it a lot harder for me to profit from all the time I spent on the rum itself. You make me a new cask and I'll let you have the whole damn thing. What do you say, is it a deal?
He stated, making his offer and letting the crowd hear as well.
I think that can be arranged, however I'm no woodworker, so I can't promise it will be able to hold even a drop of water,
she replied back.
Ah, too bad, I was hoping to win you over with the deal of the century here,
he said back.
I may not be a woodworker, but I can return the cask when I'm done, plus I will bring you an empty cask. I will even spruce it up a bit with my signature flavor. How about that?
She said with her own deal.
You, my lady, are a true businessman, you've got yourself a deal,
he said enthusiastically, holding his hand out for a handshake. She shook hands and paid him, then began lifting the keg on her shoulder. She began to glow with a black aura and hefted it easily, then began walking away.
Hold on, madam, I bet you and I could work out a very beneficial relationship here. You spruce up my casks and I cut you in at 30%. no 40% the profits. What do you say to that?
The man asked, trying to keep her attention.
Unfortunately, I am in no need of money, my good sir. My only income is the health of others, and my services are not a commodity for sale. I heal for the Lord's praise, and only for the Lord's does my work gain profit.
Syrya replied and started walking again.
Oh, so that's who you are. I see the church can't open its doors when men die, but they can when their reserve runs dry. I suspected that something was going on up there,
the man said in a harsh tone. Syrya stopped and turned around. She stared directly at the man.
Sir, if you don't respect the church, that is your opinion, but I assure you that our closing was not for a blasted party. There are things happening that you would not believe, and it is our intention to stop them now. If you would excuse me, I have business to attend to.
She replied in anger and stormed off. Gerald hadn't expected that to turn so quickly, but he was backed into a corner. He resented the church for their failings, but that woman had such conviction in her voice that he couldn't help but look back on his comments with disgust. Eve was still feeling ill and had taken to reading the Book of the Gods to calm herself. She was halfway through a passage before Ares began waving her arms around like she was casting a spell.
I turned you into a frog, Mama. Now the only way to change you back is a kiss,
she said, running up to Eve and kissing her cheek. Eve smiled and picked up Ares in her arms.
You big strong mage, why would you turn dear old Mom into a frog?
She asked in a laugh.
Because you made a frog noise last night,
Ares said, mimicking a frog.
Oh, did I?
Eve asked, obviously trying to cover up her sickness.
It wasn't a frog noise, she had another nightmare. It's not a game, we are sick and the church is the only way to heal us. Stop thinking magic will do anything more than hurt us,
she said in an angry tone.
Lilith, stop being mean. She can believe in magic, after all it is real, we've all seen it,
Eve commanded and looked at Lilith with motherly disapproval.
I just don't get it. Why does she care so much about the thing that is making us feel so terrible? It's as if she finds pleasure in it,
Lilith retorted.
I know things are hard, but we will be better, Lily. Just let her find the good in a bad situation,
Eve said back, trying to calm the girl. Syrya placed the cask down in the middle of the sanctuary, popped the top of it off and tossed 4 small logs inside, then closed the lid.
How much did you spend on it?
Haith asked, walking up behind her.
100, and a promise to return the cask when I'm done, plus I have to cast a spell on another one, she replied.
Wait, why do you have to do that?
Haith asked, surprised.
This cask was made by a mage who used a fire spell to char the wood, which imbued it with their magic,
she replied and leaned on the cask, handing the leftover coins to him.
But I thought you wanted a natural solution, not a magical one?
He asked, trying to understand her logic.
At first that was the plan, but I thought that if I'm the one casting the fire spell and another mage's essence was already a part of the cask, I could amplify my fire using that residing magic as a repelled source. I could have essentially 2 mages here instead of 1,
she said with a big smile.
I hope it all works out, Syrya. This is a trying time for us,
Haith said in a serious tone. Gerald had been so excited that he sold his rum, but he didn't expect to sell the entire thing to one person. He was, however, glad he would be getting 2 casks from it. At first, he didn't realize that the woman he was negotiating with was the chapel healer, but now, a day after he had sold her the keg of rum, he thought he was an idiot. How stupid was he? From the first elven mage he met, he was told that only 6 of them made a trek to the mainland, and that was only for a recon mission, so out of 6 mages, he could only get to see 1 or 2 his entire life. He did think she looked too young to be one of the 6, but at the same time he didn't know her age, and if the women looked younger than the men their entire life. He tried to keep his mouth shut, but he ended up blurting out something stupid at the woman, and then got an earful of well-deserved spite from her. He did think the church was being rather shady and rude by avoiding the world, but if what the healer said was true, they were doing it for the good of all. He still hated that they couldn't send one person to the eulogy for his fallen employees, but what did he know? He never went to the church. He put on a religious face to please his kingdom, not for himself. In fact, he rather disliked the religion as a whole, relying on self-expression of his beliefs. He believed in the gods, but not like others did. He was under the impression that the world was too cruel for the gods to be controlling everything. He instead believed that the gods created the world, then left its creation to its own fate. After all, there were too many rapes, murders, drug dealers, and crooks in the world. Why would a god or gods make them do such things? Just to laugh, just for a sick game? Whatever the answer was, he would find out when he died, and that would be in a very long time. He was standing in his cellar, staring at where his cask was sitting. He ran his hand along the rack it sat upon and smiled. He made his way to his front room and noticed a woman and 2 children approaching his home. He watched them for a moment, not sure what they were doing, but as soon as they got to his doorstep, he realized they might be here about their father. He didn't want to be the one to have to explain what happened. In fact, he had made sure letters were sent to each of the men's families, but here was a widowed mother and her 2 daughters. He heard the knock and had an instinct to ignore it, but he knew he couldn't, so he approached the door and opened it, preparing to explain everything again.
"Hello sir, I was told you are the employer of the construction crew for the city,"
the woman said, not showing any sign of depression or anxiety, no tears or weeping, just a simple question.
"Yes, I am. What can I assist you with today?"
he answered, just waiting for the shit show to start.
"My husband came here a year ago to assist in the construction. I was wondering if you could help me locate him,"
she said, still not breaking down. At this point, Gerald was surprised. Normally in this situation, the women could barely speak, but this woman was clear and calm.
"I run this district, so if he is employed by me I can. However, there are 10 districts with over 1,000 employees in each, so I may not be able to help." "What was his name?" "I'll see if I have him on file,"
he replied, hoping that it wasn't one of the men that had died.
"His name is Farron Black,"
Eve replied.
"All right, let me check. Come in, please, make yourself at home,"
he replied, walking over to a box full of papers. He flipped through them for several minutes, while Eve and her kids sat down on a couch, looking at the many decorative pieces around the room. A large buck with 3 antlers, a carved bird made from wood, several swords and bows hanging from the walls, and a large fish with a set of teeth like razors all lined the room in various places. Gerald had gone through the files twice and saw no mention of a Farron Black. Then he stood up to deliver the news.
"I'm sorry ma'am, I did not employ your husband. You would have to ask the other district's managers, but I don't know everyone who is in charge at the moment. Things change around here often and workers are transferred to different districts on a regular basis. The only person I can point you to is Cree, and he is across the city on the western border. It would be a week's travel,"
he said, trying to be helpful.
"I see. Well, thank you for the help, sir. I was hoping to visit with him. My children and I haven't heard from him in a long time and we are undergoing a very trying time,"
Eve replied, losing hope. Lilith and Ares both looked down and began to tear up.
"I'm so sorry ma'am, I wish there was more that I could do, but like I said, things change really quickly around here. I can write Cree and send you his response if that could help,"
he said, attempting to try a different solution to stop the eventual breakdown.
"No, that will not be needed. I have faith the gods will return him home soon enough,"
Eve said, keeping her composure.
"Thank you again. We will be going now,"
she continued.
"I hope you are correct ma'am. Have a great day and please take care,"
Gerald said, showing them the door. Eve and her daughters walked back to the inn in tears, but they had been trying to keep their expectations tempered all day. They knew the city was large and they only had a few days here.
"Let's keep our heads up, girls. We need to be at our best for the cleansing. Let's not let this weigh on us, for it might tamper with the healing,"
Eve said as they got back to their room. Lilith and Ares nodded but still cried.
Today is the day. We will rid the family of this evil and stop a potential disaster from happening. Let us be strong and fueled by the gods' love. We are here for this exact purpose and we will carry out our duties with the gods on our side. Syrya, are you ready to perform the cleansing?"
Father Haith said, placing small gray smears of ash on each of their foreheads.
"Yes, Father, I am."
she answered, pulling magic through her body, allowing her to be surrounded by a glowing black aura.
Jaren, are you prepared to recite the blessings of the gods?
Haith asked his son, placing the ash on his forehead.
Yes, Father, the Lord's words will be in our hearts and minds.
Jaren replied, closing his eyes.
Let us summon the family then and cleanse them of the impurity that haunts them.
Haith said as he bowed to both of them. Eve, Lilith and Ares were standing in the sanctuary in front of a fire pit and a keg. They stood there quietly as Father Haith, Jaren and Syrya all prayed around it. As the prayer concluded, Syrya opened the keg and pulled 3 logs from the liquid and placed them in the fire pit. She pulled the box the page of the Narcissus sat in out from behind the pit and opened it with the key and placed the box back down. She had removed the key from the necklace before the 3 women had arrived so as to not reveal she was wearing Eve's wedding gift. Syrya levitated the page from the box, being careful to not touch it with her hands, and held it above the pit.
We are to burn the page in a holy ritual and cleanse the 3 women standing before you. May your light grant us guidance in the dark.
Syrya said, her body glowing dark black with an aura so large it engulfed her entire being. She conjured a black flame in her left hand and flung it into the fire pit. Pink and black flames raged upward and Syrya lowered the page into the fire. Eve got a flash of pain in her chest and fought not to cough. She tried to push away the pain, but it was too great and she grasped at her chest. She saw several images flash through her head in a bright silver color. She lurched forward and heaved. Lilith was beginning to hear screaming, but as she looked around the room, the only one making any movement was her mother. She dropped to her knees as the pitch rose covering her ears, and she began to cry. Ares was staring intently into the fire as the colors danced back and forth in random fashion. She felt an odd pressure in her chest, but ignored it as she watched the page burn into ash and disintegrate before her eyes. As the page vanished into the fire, Eve got another set of images and pain shot through her. She threw up blood onto the floor with a hacking cough. As she looked at the blood, it pooled into one last symbol, then she threw up again, making the symbol disappear into a mess of blood and saliva. Lilith stood back up and ran to her mother, dropping to her knees, and rubbed her back.
Mum, are you okay?
She yelled, tears streaming down her face. Ares, still staring at the fire, didn't notice her mother or sister. Her eyes were fixated on the many colors that appeared in the flames, bright silver, purple, black and pink streaks mixed into the ever-changing flow of the flames. Her eyes stuck to the magic fire like a nail in the wall and wouldn't let her look away. Syrya dropped her glow and exhaled exhaustively. Her hand was cramped up and small wrinkles appeared on her knuckles. She wanted to make sure that she had all the power she could, so she had used the gemstone to amplify the fire, and it took its toll, but nothing like her week of studies with it and the page. Father Haith and Jaren began praying over the 3 women, and Syrya began to apply a healing spell on Eve as Lilith was still yelling.
Give her a moment to recover her breath. She will be just fine,
Syrya said, holding her hand out, letting herself be engulfed in a black aura again. Eve coughed and sat up. She saw the images over and over in her mind but couldn't make any sense of them. Ares, finally detached from the fire, noticed her mother and sister crying in a heap on the floor and ran over to them. As she approached, she saw a large pool of blood on the floor and began to tear up.
Mommy, are you okay?
She asked, almost sobbing as the words exited her mouth.
I'm fine, sweetie,
Eve said, grabbing Ares and pulling her into the hug. The 3 cried in a heap on the floor for a few minutes as the priests and mage prayed over them. Eve stood up and asked for a drink of water. Syrya ran into the kitchen and ran back moments later with 3 cups of water. Handing one to each of the girls, she spoke softly but firmly.
You must tell me, did you see anything, hear anything during the cleansing?
I heard screaming. Just screaming. I couldn't tell what was being said, just kept getting louder and louder.
Lilith answered quickly.
Symbols flashed in my mind. So many I can't explain. And searing pain in my chest like my heart was being ripped out.
Eve answered after a large drink of water. Ares was the last to answer, but she said nothing. Syrya kneeled down to her, taking in the answers of the other two.
My child, you must tell me if you saw anything, felt anything,
she said softly.
Silver,
Ares said after a moment.
You saw silver? Where at?
Syrya pressed.
in the fire after the page burned there was silver in the colors.
Ares replied after thinking for a few seconds. Syrya was stunned. She had learned that the mage that wrote the page had infused silver magic into the object, but only trained mages could see the imprinted magic.
This child is special,
she thought as she turned her attention to the others in the room.
The cleansing is complete. You may experience side effects for a while. I suggest you return in a few years to have me check if the magic has dispersed entirely. During that time write to me if you experience anything like these images, screaming, or in your case the silver color you saw.
Syrya said, turning back around.
Jaren will escort you back to your inn. You must rest for the next week. Stay indoors and stay hydrated,
Syrya said softly.
Thank you, sister,
Eve said, standing up, gathering her kids. Lilith passed by Syrya and smelled her perfume. She shivered and stopped in her tracks. Eve, holding both of her children's hands, was tugged back as Lilith stopped.
Hold on a minute, Mum. I have to ask something.
Syrya looked at Lilith and smiled.
What is it, my child?
Can I ask you something in private?
Lilith asked, looking down in embarrassment.
Of course,
Syrya said, wrapping her arm around Lilith. As the elven mage's arm touched Lilith's skin, she blushed and felt a heavy wash of emotions. They walked up the hallway a bit and stopped.
What did you want to ask Lilith?
Syrya asked, standing in a formal manner.
I can't stop thinking about you.
Lilith started to say, and trailed off, looking away in embarrassment. The perfume was heavy on her mind as they stood together. Syrya, seeing the girl struggling to keep her composure, placed her hand on her shoulder.
What do you mean?
Syrya pressed on with a sweet tone.
After you came to my house, I've been feeling strange. I keep thinking about you,
Lilith said, still embarrassed.
Your perfume makes me feel like I'm drowning. I get nervous and scared and I feel like I'm on fire. I'm sorry,
Lilith said.
Oh, sweetie,
Syrya said, embracing Lilith in a hug. She had never expected this. A young human girl experiencing a crush on her was flattering and strange at the same time.
There is no need to be sorry about how you feel, Lilith. It's only natural,
Syrya continued, and Lilith looked up to her.
I'm sorry about being so mean. I am so afraid and I got angry with you because you can use magic. I'm so confused and scared,
Lilith said. Syrya had no idea what the girl was feeling bad about, as it was only natural to be afraid of magic. In the heat of the moment she didn't think, she just acted. She lifted the girl's chin, pressed her lips to hers and kissed her. She released and smiled.
There is no need to be sorry, Lilith. All is forgiven in the eyes of the Lords. They made you in their image and blessed you with the heart and emotions to express yourself.
Lilith, caught off guard by the sudden kiss, fell into her emotions. She felt hot, her cheeks burned red and her heart raced.
I understand your struggles. My place is here at the church and yours is to protect your mother and sister. The feelings you have are natural and are beautiful. Take care, Lilith, and remember that you can always write to me,
Syrya said, then pulled a bottle from her left pocket and placed it in the girl's hand. Lilith looked over the bottle, then popped the cork off and smelled rose, lemon and fire. She looked up to catch Syrya disappearing into the sanctuary and she smiled. After replacing the cork, she tucked the bottle away in her pocket and ran back to her mother and sister. Farron felt several familiar presences near him. He tossed his arm over, grunted and moaned, but had no way of moving his entire body. He could feel something happening only a few minutes later. He felt a burning sensation in his legs, and out of instinct he kicked. It only lasted a few moments, but it was a searing pain running up his legs. He thrashed about, still unable to wake up. His consciousness was returning bit by bit, but he was still so deep in his coma that his body couldn't react to what he was attempting to do. He lay there trying to wake up and figure out why his legs were on fire, but he simply couldn't. Syrya didn't understand why she had kissed Lilith. After all, she was a priestess. She could still taste Lilith's lips on hers and didn't know why she enjoyed it so much. She was trying to figure out a way to explain that what she had felt was natural, yet she had kissed the girl. It wasn't out of a sexual desire or even love. Was it pity? Maybe, but it felt like the right thing to do in the moment. She had given her a bottle of her perfume as a parting gift to lift her spirits, but was it all going to be okay? Did she make a mistake by acting off of instinct? Syrya snuffed out the fire and headed back to her room. She sat on her bed rolling over the events of the day over and over. Burn the page, heal Eve, kiss Lilith, it was all so much. She sat there for hours, just trying to make sense of it. Was it right for her to do that? Was she wrong for thinking that it was the right thing to do? She just didn't know. She got off the bed and prayed on her knees to the gods. Her mind creeping back to the kiss she gifted to the young girl. After a few days of rest, Syrya made her way out of the chapel and into the nearby market. She passed several stands selling fish, rugs, breads, and more before she came across a small carpenter shop. Jolin's Woodworks, the sign read with intricately carved letters into a dark piece of wood hanging above the door. She entered the doorway and was amazed by all the trinkets, signs, furniture, and toys splayed across the small building. As she was staring at a tiny bird carved from a knot of a tree, a burly woman stepped behind her and asked in a gruff voice,
"Do you need anything in particular, ma'am?"
which startled Syrya.
I'm looking for a cask, something I can put ale in,"
Syrya said after calming herself. The large woman was laughing under her breath at Syrya for how easily she was frightened.
"I got just the thing, it's over here, come along,"
the woman said deeply. Syrya followed the muscled woman to the corner of the shop. There sat 3 casks, each bigger than the last. Syrya picked the largest of the 3 and the woman picked it up without any trouble. She brought Syrya over to the counter at the front of the shop and placed the cask down.
"That will be 40 gold,"
the woman barked, and Syrya produced several coins from her pocket.
"Let's see, 20, 35 and 40.
She counted, placing the coins on the counter. Syrya reached for the cask, but just before she lifted it, the woman called out,
"A little thing like yourself can't carry that on your own, how about I carry it for you?"
"I'm fine,"
Syrya said, glowing black and hefting it onto her shoulder. The woman blinked several times, then rubbed her eyes.
"Well, my mistake, you're blessed, may you have safe travels,"
the woman said in surprise and apology. Syrya just smiled and walked out the door. Syrya placed the cask down just outside of the chapel and lit it on fire. The black flames raged for only a few moments before she snuffed them out. She let the cask cool outside while she entered the building.